Hey everybody, so I hope you enjoyed that little flashback before this. Basically there's a little montage of clips from very old episodes, for the most part, from the previous year. As you saw, there was a little clip of Rinri. She was in one of my videos, as well as Catholic Pat, who you may know from Screw Attack and game trailers. He puts his stuff up there pretty often. He was in the same video with her. And as well, there was when I reviewed Pac-Man 2, that was one of my first featured videos on game trailers, and just some other old things. The very first clip was actually the very first intro I ever made for Retroactive, and thusly the very first editing I think I actually ever did of a video in such a manner. So I hope you enjoyed that. But here I'm going to give some thanks for some people who made some donations, and for just some general thanks and stuff too. And then we'll move on to the actual part 2 that you guys voted for, and you wanted to see this collection back here. So I'm going to do that. But first, I got to give these thanks, and we're going to start that now. My friend Chris, who you may know from the Joypad podcast, if you ever listen to that, when it was still around, he co-hosts that, and he's a good friend of mine. He sent me Earthworm Jim, Super Nintendo, Super Metroid, and Super Mario 64. All great games. I definitely was excited to get these, so I'm gonna put these aside, but the better one, for me anyway, was getting Ghostbusters for Atari. This was great. I didn't actually expect to get this one. I knew he was sending me the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64, and when I got this, I was really excited, because, I mean, you know how much of a Ghostbusters fan I am, and it never hurts to finish off my video game collection and my Ghostbusters collection. And I played the Atari version, but I've never actually owned it, so it's great to actually be able to play that whenever I want. I may do a review on it. I know you guys are probably tired of Ghostbusters by now, but I may do one anyway. Then another friend of mine, who you know, does my title cards, V, and all that kind of stuff. She was also co-host of the Joypad podcast. She sent me Mario Mania, the Player's Guide, back when Super Mario World came out. This is a great book. It actually goes through Super Mario World with maps and hints and all kinds of stuff, but also has, like the title suggests, Mario Mania. It also has a bunch of stuff about, the games before it, some history and some tidbits. Really cool little book. If you can find it, you can actually find it pretty cheap on like Amazon for like 10, 15 bucks. It's a good book to own if you're into this kind of stuff. And then my last one of my favorites, was sent to me by a fan who runs a website called PlayStation Collecting. It's kind of like an RF generation type website just for PlayStation. And he sent me New Ghostbusters 2. I'm really excited to have this. I mean, I've played New Ghostbusters 2 through emulation my whole life, but getting this wasn't exactly, especially when I first started, really learning about importing games and emulation and stuff like that. Getting one of these was not exactly an easy thing to do, and it just kind of fell wayside actually ever finding one. And he sent me it, and I'm really excited. I'm glad to have it. I mean, I can't play it, but I'm really excited to have it. Again, finishes out my Ghostbusters collection, finishes out my video game collection, so I'm really excited to have this. I thank him a lot for that. And you definitely need to check out the website, and I'll put the link, right here. And then some other thanks, of course. I gotta thank V so much for doing all my title cards and, being really supportive and all kinds of stuff. Because those title cards are great. I'm sure you guys have seen them. I know you've seen them. And if you haven't checked out the rest of her art, here, check out the link right here. Should be right here somewhere. Go there and check it out. I've linked to it 1,000 times, but if you haven't gone, you really should. She's got some great artwork, and it's great. And then, of course, I need to thank Lance and John and the rest of the RetroWare TV crew for putting me on the website, and Ben originally for getting me as an ArbDub Force user, and then they brought me onto the website as a full contributor. It's been great. I'm now admitting the website and all kinds of stuff. It's growing all the time, and I'm just getting more and more opportunities as time goes on. I'm really excited. So thanks so much to them. All right, so now I'm finally going to show you this thing back here that you've all wanted to see for some reason. I don't really get it. All the things I offered, I kind of figured you would vote for it because, we're all video game nerds, so why not? But, I mean, looking at it, to me, it doesn't seem like it's that awesome of a thing behind me. But you wanted to see it, so we're going to. So let's get started. Alright, so let's start over on this wall. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. So here, obviously, here's a Super Nintendo poster I've had since I was a little kid, from when I got my second model Super Nintendo. There's a picture of me at Universal Studios, nothing to do with nothing. Here's the Sega Genesis you saw at the beginning of the 1 year anniversary video. Don't worry, I didn't damage a good Sega Genesis. This Genesis was broken when I bought it. Like, I got it a cheap resale for a couple bucks. And the Switch doesn't really work too well. I had picture, and then suddenly it just lost picture, so something fried in it. Up here we have a Sega Genesis poster from the original releases of all the games. And then down here, some stuff I got out of box. It's a Power Glove, of course, which does work. I have all the stuff to use the Power Glove. I have used it before. And here's the NES Advantage. And before to be asked, no, I will not do a review on the Power Glove. I will not do a video involving the Power Glove. I think there's been enough of them at this point in time. Here we got my PlayStation, my original PS1. I'm not sure which model it is, top of my head at the moment. But it's, that's that. Here's my Atari that you've seen in a video before. It's a 4-switch. And then here's my beautiful Sega Dreamcast. I love my Sega Dreamcast. My Model 2 Genesis, which is what I actually use to play games. And then my Model 2 Super Nintendo. I don't actually own a Model 1 Super Nintendo. Not really sure why, I just never have. I've owned this since they released it. And then here's my Wii with Super Mario sitting on top with his little raccoon ears from Mario 3. And here's my Nintendo 64 with a Super Mario 64 card in it, which I talked about earlier. Here is a Metroid, other M poster, which is from a Nintendo Power, and here's another poster from Nintendo Power. It's when they did the whole retro issue. Pretty cool poster, actually. Then of course down here is my toaster NES that I've had since I was a little kid. This is my original toaster NES. It's about the only console I've never ever parted with. Over here we've got all my disc-based games, starting up top with my Dreamcast. Got Tony Hawk, Razor, which I've never opened, Sega Bass Fishing, which I never opened simply because I don't have a rod, so why open it? Tomb Raider, which I hate. I really hate this game. I just can't get into it at all. Virtua Tennis, which is a good sports game. Even if you're not really into sports games, it's a good sports game. Web browser, which I never opened because I have no use to. Sonic Adventure, of course. NFL Blitz 2000, which I have never gotten to work. I actually have gone through 3 copies when the store that I bought it from originally had them and was still open, and I just never could get it to work. I don't know why. Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX, which is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Blue Stinger, which is for all those that are into survival horror, is actually a pretty good little survival horror type game. Mega Man X4, which is a great Mega Man game. Die Hard Trilogy, PlayStation now, obviously. Here's Oddworld, great Oddworld. I love Oddworld. Blaster Master, which is an interesting PlayStation game. It's supposed to be a sequel to the original Blaster Master for Nintendo, original Nintendo. It's interesting. It's very, it's worth giving a shot. I don't know if I'd call it a good game, but it's pretty interesting. Tekken 3, which I've never actually played on my PlayStation. I always use a boot disc and play it on my Dreamcast. Dark Forces, which is a fun Star Wars game. Rayman, which I also own for Windows 3.1, and the original Tomb Raider. And here's a bunch of promo discs and my one Saturn game. Virtua Fighter 2, gotta have it if you have a Saturn. Here's a bunch of old PC games too, and like I said, there's my Rayman for Windows 3.1 and 95. Warcraft 2, the only time I ever played Warcraft. I've never played the MMO or anything like that. Warcraft 2 was all about it though. Seventh Guest, which is an interesting puzzle horror game. And here's a bunch of games I don't have proper cases for, like Jedi Knight. Easily my favorite, one of my favorite video games ever. Probably my favorite PC game ever. I love Dark Forces 2. And then of course down here we got bootleg. Here's my Sega Saturn, which I don't have plugged in because, like I said, I only have the one game for it, but it does work. I got it really cheap at not a yard sale, a flea market, like just a couple bucks. And it came with didn't come with all the cables, but most of them. It came with the power cable, and it did come with the AV cable, but it was just like a RF cable, no controllers. I thought it did, and ended up being just a Genesis controller, really, 6-button Genesis. And here's my Sonic and Tails that I've had since I was a kid. I think I got these at Babbage's, and I had to put them on layaway because they were pricey back then. Here's Sonic the Hedgehog comic book. There's one behind it as well, next to a Game Boy Color case. And here we've got my Game Boy Advance poster, which Lance really wants and he can't have. And then up top we got the GameCube release poster. My Saturn was sitting on my drawers for all my controllers. Tons of controllers in here. Probably more than I'll ever really need. Some Mario Land 2. There's Saturn 3D controller. I've got all 4 Dreamcast controllers, and that was my cell phone. Probably one of the one I have most of is Genesis controllers, because I keep getting them in like boxes for when I do like, you know, just large buys and stuff like that of a box. And there's usually like, for some reason, like some 6-button third-party Genesis controller. So I've got like 5 Genesis controllers that I don't need. And here's of course a gray zapper. I have an orange one too. And here's a third-party Atari controller, which are really cool. They have big bass on them, 2 buttons, and a retractable cord. There's tons of stuff in there, but they're all controllers. We know what controllers are. Alright, so let's start up top of my gaming collection here. Up here, these are the games that were donated that I talked about before. And then here's some extra NES, Flying Dragon, and Super Mario 3. There's my Super Nintendo box. There's not a Super Nintendo in there. It's the same one that is right there. I don't have 2 Super Nintendos. That'd be nice, but I don't. Here's some Mattel Electronics classic handheld games, the LED games. Great stuff. I have baseball and I have football. And then we've got Nintendo 64 movie here from when they first released Nintendo 64. Classic. I really want to do a review on this. It's so hilarious. It's so hilarious. And then we've got Retroware TV Best of DVD. You should go buy that right now. Here's my GameCube. I do actually own a GameCube along with my Wii. I just don't always have it plugged in for obvious reasons. But every once in a while, I really get in the mood to play it on the original GameCube. Then on the next shelf, we've got my Game Genie in box with a manual, and it's destroyed. Beat the heck. I've had it since I was a kid. And I think it was originally a Blockbuster rental before I bought it from them. Classic 80s home video game book, which I did a review of before. Here's the Mario Mania book I talked about before. My 2 Intellivision games. I don't own a television. I just found these really cheap and bought them on a whim. Game Shark. Here's my boxed Game Boy games. Of course, gotta have my Pokemon. These are the only Pokemon games I've actually ever played. I stopped after Gold and Silver. My original brick Game Boy, which has a problem with the screen, but it still works. My Vulpix, which I got for Christmas when I was a little kid. Love Vulpix, my favorite Pokemon. My Game Boy Color. Tamagotchi. I used to play this all the time when they first came out, before they expanded from my elementary school. Good times right there. My Game Boy Advance, even though I have no Game Boy Advance games. I kind of got out of handhelds right after the Game Boy Color for a long time. Here's all my Atari games. Not a big collection, but definitely some good Atari games. I would suggest just buy all of these, except Fast Food. This is a really terrible game. Really terrible. And here's the Ghostbuster game, of course, I talked about. And then we got my other loose Game Boy games, like Mario Land 2. Great Game Boy game. Everybody should have that if you have a Game Boy. Gargoyle. And Kirby's Dream Land. You gotta have Kirby's Dream Land. Game & Watch. Island 2, which is actually pretty cool. I kind of like it a little bit better than the NES version, actually. And then we've got Tailspin, which I don't really care much for. And Conker's Pocket Tales. And of course, here's all my Nintendo 64 games, which I would like to just pull them all out and show you, but it's a pain in the butt to do that. I wish, you know, of course, they should have end labels. Everybody's always complained about. So enjoy this short list of what I own. Alright, enough of that. Move down the shelf, and we have, we'll start right here with my Super Nintendo games. You know, I got Mario Paint, which I do have the proper mouse for, and Star Fox. Here's Pac-Man 2. Here's T2, the arcade game. Wing Commander. Killer Instinct. Tasmania, which really sucks. Here's, of course, Legend of Zelda. You gotta have Legend of Zelda. Super Metroid. Phantom 2040. This is actually a pretty cool little platformer for Super Nintendo. Terrible cartoon. Phantom was not a good movie either, but it's a good platformer for the Super Nintendo. You can find it pretty cheap. Here's my NES games. You know, pretty standard stuff. New Ghostbusters 2, like I talked about. Here's my Quattro Adventure 4, which I've never gotten to work. I just can't get to work on my Nintendo. I don't know why. Here's second row. We got all this stuff here. Metroid, of course, and Ninja Gaiden. Marlon Secret Castle, which so many people complain about. but it's one of my favorite NES games. I think it's really fun, and I really love the sequel on Super Nintendo, Do Re Mi Fantasy. You should definitely play that. It's on Wii Virtual Console. What else we got? Kirby's Adventure, of course, and Kid Icarus. Love Kid Icarus. Both gold carts of the Zelda games, and Journey to Silius, which is a great game. Dig Dug 2, which is actually a fun little arcade game. People complain because it's not really Dig Dug, but it's still fun. The Creon Conquest. Another game that people complain about. It is really super hard, but if you love Mega Man style games, you love, Battle Kid, you need to give this a shot. You really need to give this a shot. I love playing it. I know it's really hard and it doesn't have any continues and that sucks, but it's still super fun to play. Bucky O'Hare, one of my favorite games for the NES for sure. And that's that. That's all those. I know I'm going through these really quick, but you get the idea. So here's my Genesis games. I got MI1 Sega Master System game. Of course, it's got to be Ghostbusters. Next to Ghostbusters. Here's all these. Terrible game. Spot Goes to Hollywood. One of those licensed games. They're just awful. Here's a Knuckles game, LCD game that was released by McDonald's in like '97. It's actually a pretty cool little soccer game. Robotnik throws soccer balls at you and you gotta block them. I do call him Robotnik because I watched the cartoon far too much as a kid. Yeah, here's a Robotnik little toy from McDonald's. I'm not really sure when that came out. And here's all my loose Genesis games. Some good stuff in there. Of course, gotta love Castlevania Bloodlines and Dynamite Headdy. You don't have to love Sonic 3D Blast. And then below that, we've got my boxed NES games. Super Mario 3, Double Dragon 2, Star Tropics, great game. Star Tropics 2, still a great game. I don't care what anybody says. Earthworm Jim 2, Super Nintendo obviously. Yoshi's Island, Buster Bust Loose. Super Mario RPG, of course. Here's my one Nintendo 64 game. You gotta have, I'm not a big Zelda fan, but there's just a couple games I have to have, and that's Ocarina of Time, and I had to have the Super Nintendo game. Of course, I had to have the original NES games. But my favorite one is, where is it at? Aha, Wind Waker. I love Wind Waker. I really wish I had the original thing, and I need to get it. But Wind Waker is my favorite Legend of Zelda game. These are my GameCubes. Throne of Darkness is a great game. Star Fox Adventures, which, obviously is very un-Star Fox-like, but it's still a fun game. Geist, which, it's a good game. It had such a great concept, but they just really executed it poorly, very lazy, but it's still fun to play. Animal Crossing, which is another one of my favorite games of all time. I played this non-stop when I got it from my GameCube. I love Animal Crossing. Unfortunately, when it came to the Wii version over here, just screwed things up so bad. They had so much potential and they just did so many things wrong, left so many things out. I mean, there's less space used on this whole DVD than there was on the GameCube disc, which is sad. There should be so much more content in this game. Oh, and I should also mention, I got Super Mario Sunshine, which I like more than Mario 64. Go ahead and unsubscribe now. I understand, but it's the truth. I really do. I really enjoy it more. Luigi's Mansion, which is one of my favorite games of all time as well. It was really hated when it first came out, but I always loved it. It's just so fun. It had issues for a, first game being released for the GameCube, but it's fun. Who cares? That's that. And then down below are the rest of my PC games. We got Wing Commander, KOTOR 2, which I love. I love KOTOR. And the original KOTOR, of course. Love them. I really want to play the MMO, but I'm not big into MMOs. I really wish they just released a third KOTOR, As you see, I was really big into Sims. I had all the expansion packs when it first came out. And then here we go. Quake 2, SimCity, Half-Life. Gotta have Half-Life. Warcraft 2 book. And then right here are just a bunch of Nintendo Power and GamePro magazines. And all my GamePro here are from the early to mid-90s. But that's it. That's my collection. A very quick show of what I have. It's not a very extensive collection, but I think it gets the job done. I'm not really much into collecting. I buy games I know I will play at some point and enjoy more than anything. Of course, there's a couple in there, as I mentioned, that doesn't really follow that suit, but can't win them all. All right, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.